Today I will play another training game here on Lichess, so let's go. 10 plus 5 rapid game. And of course I lost the previous game. You can check out the video in my channel, of course. And now we have the white pieces. I played e4, my opponent blitzed out the move e5. And now I will play knight to f3, of course. And bishop to b5. This is known as the Ruy Lopez or the Spanish game. Of course, pressuring the knight. And this move d6 is the Steinitz variation. And I covered all the Ruy Lopez theory on my channel. You can check out the playlist in the description, of course. And this is the main line of the Steinitz defense. Knight to f6 is the best move. But taking on d4 is a serious mistake due to bishop takes d7 check. And we'll see what our opponent will do. Of course, taking the knight is bad, but this is the most common move on the chess. Okay, knight to f6 is the main move. This is the best move. And now I simply castle and black is fine in this position. Okay, taking the knight now is okay. And now I simply take back with the queen once the bishops were exchanged. And of course, if I take back with the queen, there is no knight to jump to c6 to attack my queen. And now bishop to g5 is the best move. This is still theory if I remember correctly. And now rook to d1 should be the best move. Let me think for a little bit. Rook d1 and followed by the move pawn to e5 should be the best, yes. Pressuring the d file, of course. And e5 is a common idea, of course. The pawn cannot be captured because then black loses a piece. Or maybe even two if I'm exact. Okay, rook to d8. But now, of course, the pawn can be captured. Although then I take the pawn and have some great position. Maybe e5 is the best. Because when the knight moves, of course I can just trade off everything. And I think then my position is okay. Or of what? Now now the a7 pawn is hanging. Why haven't I seen this earlier? Of course, if takes, I can takes. If I take back, he takes, and I win another pawn. Now I would be up a pawn. So what about queen takes a7 b6? Is decent. But then maybe even queen to a4, offering a queen trade, and then I have great position. Okay, queen to a7, rook a8, I simply go back to d4, the a2 pawn is defended, and I think this is just a blunder from my opponent. I think. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I think this is completely free pawn, of course. And my queen can always return back to e3 or even d4. Of course, after h6, okay, c5, but okay, I don't think this is particularly good. What about e5 now? e5 has to be just much better for me. Doesn't this loses another pawn? Yes, this should be completely winning for me. e5, h6, I take, takes, yes, this should be winning. If h6, I take, takes, I win a piece, of course. e5 is completely dominating because he cannot take, because the rook takes the queen, of course. Knight to h5 is simply, well, is it losing a piece? I'm not sure. But of course g4, but he takes my bishop, so taking the bishop has to be the best. Is this idea actually? But there is nothing, right? I simply take back and defend the g3. So I take back, right? And now I have completely dominating position. This is pretty much over, I believe. this knight on h5 is completely out of the game. He will have to go to f6. But what? Now I simply take the rook and take the pawn. Right? And I'm up 2 pawns. His knight is completely misplaced here. Queen to d2 maybe. Okay, takes, queen d2. Maybe he has something. Oh, but then I have queen to f3 putting pressure on the knight, and then I play queen to e2. Okay, this should be winning for me. Although there is this rook to b8, rook d1 takes. I'm down a rook. This is no good. But of course, then I have this same resource with queen to f3 attacking the knight, of course. And he cannot even win the b2 pawn back because I'm attacking the knight. Yes, what? The knight on h5 is completely attacked and it will have to move. And then I can play something like b3 even. Or a rook to d1 maybe. Rook d1 is probably the best move in the position. I'm not sure. Rook d1. b3, there is this move, which I don't like. And of course, rook d1. There. Not there. There. b3 takes. Then I have queen to b7, because if he takes, it's backhand checkmate. Of course I won't sacrifice the piece, but anyway. b3 has to be the correct move, and if he goes here, maybe I simply go here. b3 has to be the best move in the position, I think. And then followed by rook to d1 and maybe knight to d5 even. And then trading off all the pieces should be completely fine. Queen e5 is nothing. Is not scary at all. I think. Yes, of course, after queen to e5 I can play queen to g3 probably. Okay, this is another idea. But what about queen to d3? Maybe rook to d1 is simply good enough. Of course, the knight is protected by my queen. Rook d1 has to be the best move, right? Rook d1, putting my rook on the open d file. Of course, the rook is defended by the knight on c3. And then just trailing queens should be okay. I have extra 2 pawns on a2 and b3, of course, and they will ultimately win the game. Of course, my position is completely winning, I believe. If we trade all the pieces off, of course, the outside pass pawn will just make queen, of course. He will queen on a8, and the position should be winning. Okay, what about queen to g3? He has to take, although he has this move. Queen to d8, which is kinda awkward. Is the rook endgame winning? Probably. Knight d7, knight d5, knight d7. What is happening here? This should be winning, right? And then I take with the queen, and after takes, yes. I believe this should be completely winning. If he takes, of course. And if he doesn't take, then my position should be winning as well. I can play a rook, queen to c3 maybe, but he trades. Okay, this should be a quick win. And of course maybe queen e2, but then there is this move and he has to play queen to e8, trading off. And then just make sure to have some luft for the king. g3, h3, maybe even h4 is okay to give some luft to the king, of course. But of course he has no tricks, because he must take the queen, or he will play queen to e7. Queen to e8 is a possibility as well. Okay, queen to e7, but something like queen to d6 kind of forces the trade. Of course, attacking the rook. And this should be easy win for me now. Of course, some endgame grind will be necessary, but I think the rook endgame will be completely winning. So now I take another pawn as well, I guess, or maybe not. Maybe king f1, maybe c4, or maybe just this kind of forces trade, right? Okay, but now I can simply take the pawn, right? And queen e3. And if he takes, then yes, this is just simply winning, right? Yes, because I have queen e3 resource, and then yes, queen e3 now. And if he takes, I take back. He cannot take the pawn because of the back rank checkmate, of course. And then I will play c4. And I have 3 connected passed pawns on the queen side, and I will ultimately win the game. Okay, maybe queen to d3, threatening some mate ideas. Of course, this is not checkmate, but anyway. Maybe queen to d4 is slightly more sketchy. Of course, you cannot take the pawn because of the back rank mate. Yes, queen d4 followed by c4, I think is okay. Queen d4, I think should be fine. Followed by c4. And of course, we have enough time to win the game. And maybe he will just take the pawn on c2, and I will simply mate him on the d8 square. So what will he do? He has a lot of time. Okay, he plays h6, making some luft, but now c4 simply wins the game, right? c4, queen d2, and just start pushing the pawns towards promotion square, of course. If we trade queens, of course, this would be completely winning. But with queens on the board, it is still kinda sketchy, of course. Maybe queen b2, maybe queen d2, maybe a4. But after a4, then this pawn is kinda weak. But a4 should be the best move, right? a4 here. Queen d2 still okay. Queen b3, queen b2 seems the best. Start pushing the pawns. Is there a way to force queens off the board? I don't think so. Queen b2 seems the best because I can play a3 then and b4, c5. And then g3 will be played to make some luft, of course, for the king. And I still have a lot of time. And okay, queen to b7 was played. Maybe maybe h3 just. Oh, I missed this idea. But does it actually work? I don't think it works. Because I have check, g6, queen there, threatening mate, of course. Yes, this should be just winning. And you guys cannot see my clock, right? Yes, this is problem. I will solve it immediately. Queen b1 check, of course only move is. Okay, there I missed this, but I have f3. And just queen to a1 should be winning. Threatening mate, and of course the rook is loose as well. And how can you even defend against the mate? Maybe even g5 is okay. You guys cannot see my clock. This is bad. Why not? Just a second. this. Now you can see my clock as well. Okay, excuse me about that. And now, of course, now I'm not longer pinned, and the rook is hanging, and I will give mate on h8. This is the problem. And of course, I have 2 extra pawns, and I will win his rook, and he now has to resign probably. What will he do? I'm threatening mate. I will win his rook, of course. This is the end of the game. Maybe f6, but then I take the pawn, of course. This is probably just forced mate. g5 is the only move that covers mate. And of course he blundered mate in 1. Queen to h8 is simply mate. Or even rook to h8. What is the prettiest mate? Probably rook to h8 is kinda more beautiful, so rook to h8 is simply checkmate. So let me quickly analyze the game, of course, and let's go. I play the move 1e4 here, of course, and after e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to b5 is known as the Ruy Lopez, and now I'm kinda pressuring the c6 knight, and maybe in some positions threatening then to play knight takes e5. And now there are a few options. You can play a6, you can play knight to f6, or you can play d6 or some sidelines. But of course my opponent played the move d6, the Stein's defense. I played d4, threatening the move d5, winning the knight, of course. And the best move in the position is to play bishop to d7. But okay, my opponent took the pawn. Now bishop d7 only move. After knight to c3, he played the move knight to f6, which is the best move. And of course, taking knight is bad, as I mentioned, because then you take, and the common line goes like this, and then you get the option to castle long, and your rook is on d8 as well, and e5 now is just killing, because of course you cannot take. Let me just show you, and this is very, very common line in the Stein's defense, to simply pick up 2 pieces, of course, and win the game. So, but my opponent played the move knight to f6 here. I simply castled. He played the move bishop. Now he took the knight, of course, and after bishop takes d7, queen takes d4, bishop e7, bishop g5 for me, castles, and rook a to d1. This is very known position, I think, and still 2 games on the highest level of chess, of course, and the position is slightly better for white, of course, as you might imagine. And he played the move rook a to d8. After queen takes a7, I thought this must be just free pawn, and the computer agrees with me. But after rook a to d8, e5 was even better. Why cannot you just take? Of course, then the bishop is hanging on e7, of course, yes. Of course, if you take back with the rook, and you take back with the knight, then the bishop is hanging here. This is what I missed, of course, but okay, just taking the pawn is still okay. So after c5, I thought I must be better after the move e5, and after knight to h5, I simply took, and I took the d6 pawn, and after the trade occurred, now this pawn is free as well. So after queen takes b7, now I think my position is completely winning. The computer agrees with me, plus 2.5 for white. This means the position is winning. Why? Because after rook to b8, black is threatening to win b2 pawn, but I have queen to f3 move, threatening the knight. Therefore, the knight has to move, and then I have the time to defend my extra pawn. So now I played b3. After queen to d4, rook d1, queen e5, I simply traded everything and won another pawn. And of course, queen to e3, if he were to take, then he cannot take the c2 pawn because of the back rank checkmate, of course. So he, after queen to e3, played the move queen to c6, and I played the move queen d4, and of course you cannot take the pawn as well because of the back rank checkmate, of course. And he played the move after queen to d4, he played the move h6, I played the move c4, of course, and after queen to h6, attacking the a2 pawn. Maybe I could start pushing the pawns, of course, sacrificing the a2 pawn, but I played the move queen to b2, and then slowly won the game. why is this position so winning? Why doesn't rook takes c5 works? Because I give check, and after king to h7 I give another check. After g6 I play the move queen to a1, very important move, threatening mate, and of course the rook is hanging as well, and my opponent blundered with the move rook to c2, and then just allowing me to checkmate him. So this was kinda quick game, only 33 moves, and I kinda outplayed my opponent. So if you like the video, make sure to subscribe to follow more such content, and see you guys in another video.